Good morning, friends. Happy Sunday. So today I'm going to be talking about the term pathwalker and kind of what it means to me to walk a path. So with that, the standard disclaimer, many of the truths that we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view. So anything that I share today is not necessarily something to be taken as absolute fact. It is merely my experience that I am conveying onto you. You can take with it whatever you want, and you can discard the rest. So now the disclaimer's out of the way, I did want to thank everybody that so far has been watching my Facebook Lives. I know it's been a while since I've done one, but I've had a lot of personal growth. And in that time, I usually retreat and reflect until at some point I reemerge and then share whatever I have come to at that point. So I was starting to think about what the term pathwalker means. I don't know if that's something that already exists or something that I just gravitate to or coined, but that's kind of what I consider myself. And the definition of pathwalker for me is kind of somebody that has, for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter, decided that they are on a path for themselves pretty much for the rest of their life. It's kind of like when people lose weight and it becomes like a lifestyle choice instead of a diet. That's kind of what I consider path walking. So what exactly is the path, or what does that mean? Path walking can be a little bit kind of deceiving of a term. The word seeker kind of ties in with path walking. Usually people that walk a path are seeking something. Some people are seeking deeper meaning to life. Some people are seeking a higher purpose or even a higher being when it comes to religion. Other people are seeking themselves. They are seeking a part of themselves that they feel they have lost, or that was taken away from them, or they don't have anymore. So that's kind of another version of what the path is really about. All those definitions seem to apply to what it is. But at the heart of a path walker is a seeker. They're seeking truth. They're seeking knowledge, they're seeking themselves, they're seeking God, they're seeking something. So in that process of seeking, there is the understanding that there's kind of like a path to kind of uncomplicate things. I think of it as more of a way, not necessarily the way, but a way. And everybody has their own way or their own path at which they're seeking upon. So I was trying to think of my own personal experience and what drove me to walk a path. And in talking to other people, I also kind of accumulate data of what their paths are about and why they decide to walk a path. So typically the trends that I have seen is that usually people start a path after they've hit rock bottom. Usually they've had some kind of traumatic event that can be very sudden, and they feel lost, and they decide that they need something. They need a way. They need a system, a belief system, a religion, a process, a structure. They need something to help make sense of this feeling of being out of control in whatever tragedy that they have just suffered, to give meaning or understanding to something that does not seem to have meaning or understanding. So above and beyond that, there's also a sense of kind of, how am I going to reconcile all these feelings? Part of that is after you've hit a bottom, you've hit this place where I can no longer do this anymore. That's usually the number one reason why people start to walk a path, is they've hit a place in themselves where they feel they're at the lowest point. Maybe they don't care about themselves. They don't care about life anymore. They just They just really can't seem to go on in the way that they're going. That rock bottom prompts people to think of things that they normally wouldn't think before because they're trying to save themselves. It's a form of self-preservation. Other factors that tend to make people walk a path is a rut. Some people have been stuck in a rut for like 10 or 12 years, or maybe it's a marriage that is deteriorating, or maybe it's a single lifestyle choice that they've been carrying on since their teen years or something that makes them feel as if they're not moving forward, that they've been doing the same things over and over again. So that is another reason why somebody would walk a path. So sometimes it can be a traumatic sudden event. Sometimes it can be a slow deterioration of somebody hitting the bottom and trying to make a different choice for themselves. Sometimes it's simply to get themselves out of a rut. So the first thing that people do typically is they start looking for a way. They start looking for a pre-existing system that is out there. Religion often offers that very thing. There's different denominations, there's different religions. Sometimes it's about people going back to the core of where they started. Maybe they grew up in a belief system, or they grew up in a religion, and that offered them something at the time, but they kind of have steered away from that for whatever reason. Maybe there's a reconnecting to that previous path that they were on. So outside of religion, there's usually a lot of research. People will start looking for something, and this is the seeking aspect. People are looking for a way. They're looking for something to get themselves out of where they're at. So sometimes there's research. They see something on social media. They see something on Facebook, whether it's yoga, or sometimes they know people. They have friends that are doing something that seems to work for them, that is positive. So they start asking questions and, hey, what do you do? And what church do you go to? Or what are you doing? Are you working out? How are you feeling? How you're feeling. They start questioning people that they see are positive to try to help them decide what they're going to do, how they're going to get out of their own place that they're in. So it's kind of like compiling a research of what you're going to do. This is what I call accumulation for a path. If you were to climb a mountain, you wouldn't just wake up and fly to the foot of the Himalayas and just start walking this mountain. You wouldn't last very long. There's preparation involved, and that's kind of what seeking in the first stages of accumulating for a path really is. You're gathering knowledge, you're gathering ideas, you're networking with people, you're looking at different religions, different ways, different understandings. You're trying to develop these tools. It would be like if I'm going to climb Mount Everest, I'm going to hire a guide. Hopefully there's somebody out there that can help get me up this mountain safely. That's what people do. They're looking for a guide. They're looking for a way, and whether that vehicle is religion or they have somebody that's positive and inspiring in their life, they're looking for somebody or something to help them navigate this mountain, or at least keep them off of a very perilous path. The other part is tools. You're gonna need climbing ropes and links and all these different gear, tents and cold weather gear, and you need all this equipment to climb this mountain. The path is kind of the same way. You're developing tools along the way. Typical tools are people reading. People do a lot of research through reading. They'll pick up a self-help book or a religious book or a spirituality book, and they'll start reading. This gives them a tool for them to help decide how they're going to navigate this path. A lot of times it's just talking to other people and having conversations. Sometimes it's actually throwing themselves into a religion to kind of gather as many positive tools as they can. Everybody has their own tools that they accumulate, different ways, different modalities of seeking, through yoga and meditation, and these are all tools that are going to help you on this path. So once you've kind of gained all these tools, and you may or may not have a guide or at least an advisor, you start to kind of navigate this path of what you're seeking. If you happen to be seeking yourself and who you really are, as I was, you kind of get to this point where you feel like you've accumulated this knowledge or a direction or a way. I've read a lot of books for 2 or 3 years, and I started meditating, and I started gathering my tools and talking to people, and eventually got to the point where from 27 to 30, I was accumulating for my path. But at 30, I kind of flatly declared that, yes, I am going to walk a path, and this is the path that I walk. So my path is a spiritual path. I definitely have decided at 30 that I was a Buddhist, and that is the base camp of my path. So if you were climbing Mount Everest, you get to the foot of this mountain, you have to set up a base camp. That's where all your tools, all your equipment, maybe your guide sleeps. That's you're preparing for this climb. And it's something that when you climb and you decide you can't go any further, you may have to retreat back to. It's a place where, you can only climb so far, but you have a safe place to retreat to. So that's kind of what base camp is in spirituality and walking a path. So for me, it was Buddhism. It was something that I aligned with, and something that was already, I felt, was who I was, and that's my foundation that I build on. Now, for me personally, in my path and my ascent up this mountain, I look at all religions. I talk to people of different faiths. I look at different ways and different modalities. So although a Buddhist path offers a base camp and a foundation for me to retreat back to or to work from to propel myself, I'm always looking for many other ways and many other tools, many other modalities to kind of expand my knowledge. So I seek truth, and I seek that in all places, in all belief systems, and all different modalities and tools. That's part of my personal path. So after 30, I started ascending this mountain in myself. I started kind of looking inward. I started meditating. I started putting some of these tools into practice. Now, as I was doing this, I was still accumulating more tools and still looking at other faiths and other religions and still seeking truth. I just had more of a direction of where I was going at this point. For me personally, I've talked to other people, and it seems like it's true for other people, but I don't want to speak for them. But I know for me, my idea of a path is getting back to that place of purity. We all start out as little children, and we're all absorbing so much, and we're taking in all this information, and some of it is very positive and loving, and some of it is kind of toxic, or at least negative or not preferable. So usually about 4 or 5, we kind of come online and start to have this consciousness and awareness and memory and all these things, and we start to become an individual. It's at that point that I consider it like the purest cross point of who we are. It's when we have come online just enough to start experiencing the world, but we haven't had all the negative ramifications of life kind of seep into our core. So it's about the purest state of who we are before we were influenced or conditioned or basically unmolested by the world. So for me, walking a path was getting back to that pure state. Before these things happened, who am I before these incidents that have shaped me? So in getting back to that, that's kind of your direction that you're walking on your path. So everybody has a direction and a purpose. Some people are trying to get closer to everything around them or people around them, or some people are just trying to immediately get them out of the place they're stuck in. For everyone, there's a different purpose and a different reason. That's the direction you're walking towards. But you have to keep in mind that there is no final destination. You're not going to say, I'm going to walk a path for 4 or 5 years and I will reach my destination and I will be here, I will arrive, and everything will be fine. I know exactly what I want. So it's not like college. it is a lifestyle choice for the rest of your life. This is something you're always going to do in some capacity. Just like anything that is taken on, the first 2 or 3 years, we get very fired up and invigorated. We're a seeker. We're walking a path. We're a spiritual person. We are going to be whatever faith we are aligning to, or belief system we are aligning to. And we can sustain that for about 2 or 3 years, but then it starts to kind of change and evolve. You settle into your path, you settle into your way, you get a little more comfortable with yourself, and then there is a slight disillusioning process, because after about 2 or 3 years, we expect ourselves to be somewhere. We have some sort of expectation or some goal. So when that happens, you have to be careful, because that's when we tend to lose steam. There's a difference between kind of losing steam and being prone to give up on ourselves, walking a path or being in a new faith or religion, or just kind of settling into something and maybe not having quite as much passion and vigor for it. The difference is one of them tends to lead to disappointment, where we just feel like we didn't quite get what we wanted out of this path or this religion or this faith, and we start to give up. We start to lose faith. We start to kind of weaken in our resolve. That's kind of tragic when that happens, because usually you just have to hang in there long enough to get past that stage, to get to the second leg of your path, where you start to settle in and realize, well, what does this really mean for me? I know I had expectations in the beginning, but let's reevaluate this and let's see where we are now. If you choose to go forward, you kind of start to firmly root yourself in your own path once you get over that first hump and you start walking the second leg of your path. Because that's really what these paths are. I call them legs or distances or journeys. But all along your path for the rest of your life, you're going to hit a place every few years. For me, it tends to be like every 8 or 9 years, I hit this place in which I was walking in a direction and I got to a place and I realized that I had changed so much that my path wasn't really the same anymore, and that maybe a new direction or a new alter of my course was needed for me to continue on to walk my path. Simply taking a different direction, a slightly different angle or perspective, and that becomes the next leg of your path. I say at this point, I'm in my 4th leg of my path, and I've been walking a path for myself for about 18 years. So everybody's different. Some people are really quick learners, and they just devour their first leg in a year or so, and they're already changing course and deciding what they want to do. Everybody kind of moves along at their own rate. There is no set, determined number or distance or idea of years of when you're supposed to do something. It's based on personal, individual experience. So as you're walking on, you get past the honeymoon stage, the first 2 or 3 years, and you settle into your path, and you're on your second leg, and you may have an identity crisis when you hit the third leg. You wake up and you realize you're not quite the same person on your path, and you're not really sure where you're going to go anymore. You're not quite as confident in the direction that you're walking. This can fill you with great anxiety. It makes you feel like, well, did the last leg of my path even stick? Like, why am I so confused right now? Why am I so worried? Why do I feel like I don't know who I am anymore? And I feel like I have the same feeling as when I started. This is completely normal. This is what happens when you walk a path. Everybody hits this place, and it's okay. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means that you need to re-examine yourself and decide how you're going to go further with yourself. So many people, if they make it past that first leg, when they get to that conjunction of the second leg and they feel they're back at square one in some way, some people jump off the path. It didn't really kind of fulfill them anymore, or they got too worried in their head, or they think they failed. It's another speed bump. It's another bump that you have to get over on this path that you're walking. If you make it into your third leg is kind of an important leg because it perpetuates things from that point forward. You can have 1 and 2, but without 3, nothing really perpetuates to 4. 1 and 2 will just keep bouncing back and forth between themselves. So that third leg is what sets your feet firmly on your path, I think, for the rest of your life. It is that point in which you say, okay, I understand the process of a path. I understand when the path has changed, and I'm choosing to realign and walk a path again. One of the best sayings that I tend to say a lot, that I really assign myself to, is it's only the beginning. And the amazing thing about that phrase is you can keep saying it over and over and over again, and it will never really cease to be true. Every time you cross over a place in yourself or have a new perspective, from that point forward, it is a new beginning. And it's whatever direction you want to take. It's whatever addition you want to add to yourself. That fresh point of view is what helps you navigate in the moment. Every breath, who am I in this breath? And in the next breath, who am I going to become? It is only the beginning. So that's the phrase that you always have to think of, is that although you can become an experienced pathwalker and spiritual person, there's always a sense of newness. There's always a sense of, I'm not really sure who I am at this point, and I need to reevaluate the direction I'm going. So every time that happens, don't lose faith. Just keep walking. Another thing that people really worry about for path walking is how do I start? Or more importantly, what happens if I take a step and it's the wrong step? This is pure fear that stops us from getting to ourselves. It stops us from walking a path. It undermines us and sabotages us before we've even begun. What if I fail? How do I take this first step? Really, in asking that question, you've already taken the first step. The key is not to overly focus on it. It's not about making the perfect right first step. There is no perfect right first step. Everybody has to just take a chance. It's a leap of faith. Just try something. Just accumulate for your path. Pick up a new tool. Look into something. If you decide, hey, I'm going to start doing yoga, and you go into yoga and you have the best of intentions, but your body is stiff and tight, and physically it's just not something you feel you can do right away, it's not a failure. Taking that step, you now have new information. You understand, hey, I like the idea of yoga, but it's something I might have to stretch and work at before I get there. So it's kind of a realignment. It's not necessarily a mistake. It's just new knowledge that maybe there's a different tool that works a little bit easier for me. So then you try something like meditation and sitting still and quiet and resting within your thoughts. And if that works for you, then that's another step of your path that tends to work a little bit better for you. It doesn't matter what step you take, as long as you're taking steps, as long as you're trying. When kids get to be a certain age, 10 through 14 or whatever, and they're that experimental stage, they want to try everything. They're like, I want to try football, or I want to play the clarinet, or I want to do karate, or, I think I might try joining the theater club. That's kind of how we are when we walk a path. It's like, who do I want to be when I grow up? What do I want to try? And you want to try everything. That's part of what these tools really are. Is experimentation of ourselves. We're trying to get to something that is more purely us. Some of these things are things we revisit. Like for me, I used to love to roller skate. I roller skated from 8 to 13. This was something that I thoroughly enjoyed. And when I became an older adult in my late 40s, I think it was 47, I decided that, you know what, I really love skating. I'm going to give that another try. And people were concerned, and they're like, oh, you're going to fall and you're going to break your hip, or, it's not safe for you. And I'm like, well, let's be realistic. Let's be careful. And I got on skates, and I found that, I had the same joy skating at 47 as I did when I was 8 through 13 or 14. So it was kind of a rediscovering as an activity that I used to do that I get back to. That's usually our first default when we're walking a path. When we're trying to decide, well, who are we and who do we want to be? We start to remember things like, well, who was I before all this stuff happened? What brought me the greatest joy in life? What things did I enjoy? What did I feel like the most me while I was doing this activity? And they go back to that activity. They pick it up again. Maybe they play clarinet and they decide to pick up their clarinet again and start playing. Or for me, it was roller skating. That is kind of the easiest way to start deciding, the safest way I can think of, just like to start figuring out or getting back to who you were, is remember the things that you used to do, that you used to love, that brought you joy. That's kind of like the first layer. And you can explore these things, and some of them may work out, like roller skating for me, but some of them may be like, I thought I wanted to do this, and I used to do it. It's not really who I am anymore, and it doesn't really apply to my life now. So, there is a little bit of heartbreak or sadness, but at least you know that you have evolved past whatever that thing or that idea or that activity is, and, it's time to move on to something else. So after you've tried some of these things that used to be you, or you uncover these activities or these ideas or thoughts that used to be you kind of start thinking about adding on to yourself. Well, what haven't I wanted to do that I never tried before? What was on my bucket list? What did I want to be before I became a husband or wife, or before I had kids, or before, what did I want to do with my life? What were the things that just never panned out? And some of them are as simple as taking college classes. Some of them are new activities that you've never tried or wanted to do. That's kind of the second layer, is kind of a pickup round of things that you wanted to try. This is very encouraging, and you can find real joy and real excitement in things that you've always wanted to try but never got around to. The same rules apply as the first thing, as going back to the things you used to do. You may try something, and you try trumpet for a week and you decide, wow, it makes my cheeks hurt. I don't really like it. Let's try karate. So it's that same kind of experience where don't feel like just because you try something new, if it's not you, it's not your failure. It's nothing negative. It's an experience that you stepped out of your comfort zone to try, and it's something that's going to actually resolve this question of is this something that is me, or is this something that is not me? So everything you try is valuable, even if you don't stick with it. If you truly are inspired or impassioned by something, you will stick with it, and it will kind of integrate into a new part of you. This is me, and this is the new thing that I want to do. This is a new way I want to express myself. So there's that kind of second layer. And then we start going to the third layer. We start really going after the bucket list. We start thinking about the things that you've didn't believe were possible, that you've always wanted to do, that you think is too hard, or maybe at the time you were too afraid to attempt these things. You just didn't have the self-confidence, the self-esteem. Maybe you didn't have the courage. Maybe you just didn't have the experience and insight, or maybe you didn't have that one person in your life encouraging you, saying, yeah, I've done this. I can help you. We can do this together. We can be a team. Those things are worthy of going after, even if you don't think you can. Just set realistic expectations that the trying of this new activity in and of itself is worthwhile. It's something that you can kind of move forward with and experience in yourself. Everything that you do that adds on to yourself is of value, unless you kind of acquire a negative activity or a negative trait. But most of the time, if you're already seeking and you're already trying to add on to yourself, whether you see it through to fruition or whether you give up or whatever that is, it adds value to yourself. So the other part of this is perseverance. You have to have patience and perseverance with yourself when you try these new things. You're not going to take to these things automatically. Sometimes you will, but most of the time it's effort, it's work. Do not be discouraged walking your path. Kids, amazingly, are not discouraged. Sometimes they are, of course. It didn't work out. They're humans. They're little adults. They have the same feelings. I don't want to sound like they don't. But they're much more open for experimentation. They're much more open to try to see who they are, find out who they are. They don't know what anything is in the world. And they pick it up and they examine it. And they look at it and they ask questions. And they're not afraid of looking stupid. They want to know what these things are. People are kind of the same way. You have to have that kind of patience, just like you would with a child. Have patience with your inner child. When you try something and it starts to get hard, try to push yourself a little bit further, even though you want to give up. You may find eventually that it's not you and not something you want to do, but try to have the perseverance to see the other side of something. And I think that's kind of one of the key points of walking a path that I wanted to talk about, is that there is another side to everything that we do. But when we hit obstacles, it usually frustrates us, or it makes us quit, or it makes us feel like we failed. It gives us a reason to not go forward. And that's unfortunate. So you have to push through things. You have to push through your fear. You have to push a little bit further past, I can't do this, to see if you really can't do this, or you're just afraid to do this. Most of the time, we're just afraid to do this. If we push past that with a little more perseverance and give it a little more honest effort, then at that point, we can say, you know what, I did push past this. It is a little bit better. It is easier, but it's just not me. Otherwise, it can be you. You just have to see the positive side to things. That's what walking a path is about, is the perseverance to see that there is another side to life. There is another side to yourself. You just haven't let yourself get to that point to see that there's way more beautiful options. When we think about life, things tend to get harder and harder and more difficult, and it seems to accelerate and degenerate very quickly. Walking a path is kind of like the spiral out or reverse of that process. At first it's difficult and it's tough because you're escaping the gravity of this negative mindset and this negative conditioning that you've been stuck in. But once you start to escape the gravity, you start to feel lighter and things get a little bit easier. And just as things got progressively quickly worse, things start to get progressively quickly better. It's a mirror image of how you've been living your life. But you have to get past that point, that middle point, to see that there is light and that there is positivity. It's not some pie in the sky idea that somebody is selling to you. You can feel it. It is something that exists in your life. You can feel it inside you that hey, there's possibilities here. There's possibility. There's infinite different ways in which we can enrich our lives and be positive. That's why we are seeking on this path. That's the direction that we are walking. So overall, when you talk about paths and you talk about seeking, then there comes a place, I think, and it can happen at any part of your journey, whatever leg of your path that you're on. For me, it happened in my fourth leg, where there was an idea of I'm still a path walker, but instead of seeking, I am seeing. And what that means was typically when we're seeking, we're looking for something. We're looking for a direction. We're looking for something for ourselves. After you've been a seeker for so long, there comes a point where you start to have a little more trust. You start to let go and say, you know what, I don't really know what I'm seeking, and that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't have to have a direct purpose or a direct direction to be walking on this path. And you kind of open up and your vision expands with who you are in this moment instead of who you're trying to walk towards on your path. And then you start seeing and you start being in the moment. And when you open up your vision and start seeing in the moment, you don't have to really look for something so much as something comes across your path and you notice it as it happens. You are seeing and experiencing in real time, whether that's through the people that you're interacting with or the situations that you run across in your life. You see these things coming. Your perception expands in which you're like, oh, I know how this is going to go, maybe. And I think I know how to respond. And, this is my opportunity to do this action or to step outside of myself or to step outside of my comfort zone and do something different. In that moment, there's a great power of seeing in the moment. Your responses become a little more who you really are and genuine and authentic and pure. You start to get back to that place before, that 4 or 5 year old. You start to live in that purity with all this experience that you have in tow with yourself. And life becomes more pleasurable and joyful and easier by seeing in the moment. So these are kind of the different ways and the different legs and the different kind of factors about walking a path. And, I chose this topic. It's a massive, expansive topic. I could talk for hours on this. But if anybody has any ideas or any questions about, seeking, seeing, walking a path, accumulation for a path, or anything about what I've said, just go ahead and message me. I'll be happy to try to give my perspective, maybe not an answer, but my perspective on what it was like for me to walk a path. I feel that part of my purpose in this life or my path is to help other people. And that's not necessarily help them walk my path, because my path is not for everyone. I can assure you, my path is not for everyone. But everybody has their own individual path and their own way of seeking and seeing. So if I can help someone else start accumulating for their path, or give them advice, or just be a sounding board or a willing ear for them to get to the point where they decide that they want to do something, they want to walk a path for themselves, I'd be more than willing to answer any questions that kind of come up, or share my experiences, or help give perspective, or point somebody in a direction if they're even asking. That's kind of why I'm here. I thoroughly enjoy what I do in walking my own path, and there is nothing more exciting and invigorating than helping someone else find their own path for them to walk. I'm blessed with several friends in my life, in my circle, that are all path walkers and seekers in their own right. They're all in their own different legs of their own journey. They're all trying their own things. They're all trying to do it for different reasons for themselves. They're all using different modalities and different belief systems in different ways. But they're all walking their own individual paths. And it's such an amazing thing to watch, to know that there are all these people out there that are trying to do this for themselves. So what I found is when these path walkers run across each other, they kind of identify with each other because they're speaking the same language, and they can learn each other's dialect very, very quickly. They have a whole new vocabulary that other people don't really seem to share so much. And it's not really about these two people deciding to walk each other's paths, because that's not really appropriate. But they kind of decide that they tend to be walking in the same direction, basically, and they can talk to each other and share each other's experiences and share each other's paths. and say, this is what I'm doing. Hey, maybe this will work for you, and this is what I'm doing. Maybe this will work for you. Or, maybe they talk and they cross-pollinate and they come up with something brand new that neither of them would have thought of or done by themselves. That's always the most powerful experience, when pathwalkers team up for each other's mutual benefit, to help each other and support each other. Pathwalkers tend to be very deep and emotional people. They tend to be very honest about their feelings. They can say, I love you and I support you, and anything I can do to help you walk your path, I will do. It's a very genuine and real bond when pathwalkers team up for each other's mutual benefit. It's very symbiotic. There's a beautiful teamwork aspect where you're propelling each other forward on each other's paths. And at some point, sometimes paths change. If somebody gets on their second leg and I'm on my fourth leg, and we happen to hit the same spot at the same time, then our paths may not be so close anymore. We may still be in contact, but sometimes you have to let people go. You have to let people walk their own path. If they find a religion or a faith, or if they find tools or a modality or something, just because it's not your way doesn't mean it's not valuable to them. So you love and support them on their way. You say, this is not necessarily something I do or would do, but I believe in what you're doing for yourself. And I want to love you and support you every step of the way, whether other people do or not. Other people may not understand why you're walking a path. Other people don't have the same drive and the same passion to be a seeker or a seer. That's not something they're wired for. It's not something they want, or maybe that's not something that, they've had a life experience that has made them decide that that's probably better for them in some way. Everybody has their own reasons. So, if you get to a point where you have to kind of let someone go, just always know that once you experience somebody else on that level as a pathwalker and sharing and cross-pollinating that experience, you're always going to be connected to that person, no matter where their journey takes them, whether they're climbing a different mountain than you, or they're seeking something completely different than you. The point is that there's always value in keeping that friendship and keeping that dialogue going. Communication between pathwalkers is so important, because that's how we learn and that's how we grow. We just have to get past ourselves enough to be able to communicate honestly with love and compassion. So I really hope that this basic tip of the iceberg talk about path walking and seeking and seeing and accumulation for a path has helped you this Sunday morning. And like I said, if you have any questions or you want to communicate about any of these ideas or whatever, leave me questions, message me. And if I don't answer them directly through text, I may keep them and accumulate them and just start answering questions for the next Facebook Live. I'm not sure how that will pan out. We'll leave that up to life. I don't like to have too many preconceived notions. We'll just see what organically happens, and we'll live in the moment, and we'll see what happens. So thank you very much for spending this time with me, and I really hope you have a blessed day, and I hope that these words find you and comfort you, or make you think in some way, or at least make you feel good inside. Have a blessed Sunday.